Okay, let's look at Magic Realm. And as you can see, I have a very worn copy. I didn't buy it exactly when it came out, but it wasn't too long afterwards, I can tell you that much. I saw it along with other kind of fantasy adventuring type games in my store. Things like Wizard's Quest. Most of them looked pretty light. When you looked at the back of this, and I saw the complexity rating 9, and I'm like a Third Reich player at this time, and I can handle this. And in fact, actually, this is the selling point to me, is that when I looked at this, and it looked like a much more free and open and real experience than most of those other fantasy games looked like. Like, you'd see the TSR's dungeon or whatever, and that just looked so lame. And you kind of looked at it and said, yeah, I know that's going to be pretty lame. Same thing with, what the hell is it? Mystic Wood. That goes for a fortune. I gave a copy of it away long ago, and then it was immediately destroyed by a dog, and I kind of was like, well, that sucks. I didn't like it, but... And now I see what it sells for, and I'm like, well, I still wouldn't sell it, but shit. So I came to this game with a humongous amount of excitement. I was already a D&D player. I was already maybe into some other role-playing games by this point, and really liked the idea of something that would maybe give me that kind of experience within a board game that maybe I can play solo more easily. I've done some solo role-playing. Not something to be proud of. So what's the deal with this one? Well, it never quite satisfied me enough. I felt like I was spending too much time trying to prepare to do something, and then when I got around to it, it became kind of this mechanical task of, okay, hide, search, hide, search, and I do that like 6 turns in a row, and then eventually whatever I'm searching is finally either, is depleted or whatever. That at that level of the game, and that's still kind of probably the closest to how I'd like to play it, it just never provided what I wanted. It felt a little too mechanical, a little too lacking in story. I'm not saying like things like Citadel of Blood, I think I still have, isn't mechanical, but at least the story progresses in it. This one, I'm just stuck doing the same things again and again and again, and I'm trying to optimize my chances of not getting caught, or trying to figure out whether or not I've got the kill on this monster and I pretty much can win almost guaranteed, or whether I can get away from it if I fail to hide, or stuff like that. I'm always worried about that kind of aspect of it. And I never really feel like I'm being this adventurous hero. And to tell you the truth, terrible game that it is, Talisman gets that whole adventurous hero part down a lot better. You feel like you're just sort of stumbling around. There's not much you can do in Talisman in terms of thinking or planning or anything. But at least, you encounter things happen, right? Tales of the Arabian Nights, which I think is a great game, but maybe not so much as a game, but I think it's a great experience, feeds more into that as well. But this one always left me feeling like I was playing a dry puzzle, that, there was optimal moves at any time, and I could figure those out and utilize them. I'm not saying I'm particularly good at it, I'm saying that possibility's there. Then when I started playing it more with other people, I started running into people who are very good at figuring out how to get any little advantage over you or the game. And you'd see people take the elf strategy and, just wipe everybody out early on, grab that extra money and be able to do things with it. Or other strategies that to me felt like they defeated the spirit of the game early on. Also the fact that some of the characters maybe don't give a shit about exploring at all. that they're fine just like this guy, just blowing things up, and that's probably their quickest route towards victory. That's interesting. There's no question. The difficulty in figuring out how to best use each of your characters, I think that's part of the appeal to the game. I've seen some people say, hey, everybody's just, their characters are totally unbalanced. I'm not positive of that. What I've usually found is that there's matchups that work really well in one person's side, but there are characters who are better on their own, right? And there are characters who actually work well together. Somebody like the Pilgrim with his Make Whole would be a really good person to have in your group, except the groups don't tend to hold together too well because, well, people can all travel together and loot together and then make trades amongst each other. And that's the way I've seen. I always foresee that traveling together would work, but it doesn't really. Usually what happens is somebody gets something lucky, but they're a little worn out or something, and somebody else gets the drop on them and kills them and takes their stuff. And again, it just sort of what the game promises to what the game delivers doesn't quite work for me. But I do see where people who want to play a very competitive game would be interested in exploring this and trying to get the best advantages to it. And in that case, well, you need to play it a little differently than I do. You need to know all the rules. You probably want to go with the level 3, the version 3 rules, because I think there have been some attempts to balance there. I'm not sure I agree with those attempts, because if somebody comes with a whole bunch of equipment and they can sell that off, that's kind of a known factor. You can kind of work around that. You kind of know their victory conditions might include that. But also, how, are you going to penalize the elf because he's got the capability of stealing everybody else's money? What are you going to do? The advantages are baked into the characters. Don't worry too much about the fact that somebody maybe has enough equipment that they can probably buy one of their victory points right off the bat with money. They got other victory points they got to get, and it's not going to be that easy. And those characters that are heavily armored have other disadvantages to go with it, where they're not necessarily the best people for fighting, for killing masses of troops, nor for killing singular troops, nor for, they just really, they have their values, there's no question, but they're not ultimate, and I think there's a balance worked in that the players can kind of come to an understanding of with a deep enough understanding of the game. So yeah, this is something that's probably, it's not really for you if all you're looking for is that kind of really exciting adventure story going on. That's how I approached it, and it didn't work for me. Well, maybe you can cope with the type of math and calculation that there is in the game. There's no counting or anything like that usually, but there's a certain type of math towards fitting the rules together that's more interesting than counting would be, right? People talk about games being, oh, this is a really mathy game. What they mean is you have to do arithmetic. There's no math there. There's counting. There's arithmetic. Nothing. Anyway, there is a kind of math here in terms of the relationships that different creatures have in your ability as a character to deal with them, the relationships that the board has in your ability to deal with. And it's a very interesting thing. The fact that you get to put the board together each time sounds like it's going to make play very different each time. It doesn't really. There are always going to be choke points. There's going to be a randomization in terms of what's where, but in terms of the general flavor of the play, that's never going to change significantly. You've got people out there trying to loot the treasures, and you got people who might want to go kill things, although I never feel the desire for that. I always want to get the treasures. And here's why. If you don't win quick with the kill things, somebody who's out getting those treasures, like in my game, the wizard finding the magic, the crystal ball, you're not going to win. Boom, you're gone. Bye. Start over. One thing I did want to highlight a little bit is how I tear down the game. This is a bitch of a game to set up and tear down. And in my case, what I usually do is I take each character and they have their own little bag, like this one. And then I take a row of critters and put that in one character's bag. And I may also put one set of cards. The cards are divided into the treasure types, large, small, and special ones. And then the different levels of spell types, the different types of spell. Yeah, I should probably give a little bit more than I have on this in terms of just kind of looking at the different subsystems and talking about it, because it is such a big, complicated set of different things. The problem is, I don't know if there's that much that I actually point to and say, you know, I don't like that. That really irks me. I actually kind of like the core flavor of the game. Like, when you sit down, you read the rules, you see what it's about, you say, wow, that's great. You know, that's really great. And the first couple times I played it, I really liked it, because that's all I really saw for it. Even if I got tired and bored at towards points, I thought, wow, there's going to be so much more for me to discover in this. But in the end, I found that wasn't really the case. Now, one of the things about this is the rulebook. The original rulebook is a horrible programmed instructions game. However, they managed to get it all in 34 pages. I don't know what the official second edition rulebook was. I think it was around 100 pages. Here's the third edition, which is taking the program instruction away and trying to make it complete. And 122 pages. There's not 4 times as much game in this, you know? There's just, this is a sign of, this is a terrible rule book. But that one is way too verbose and large. It probably nails everything down, but it is unreadable. And I'm not saying, geez, I can't read a 100-page rule book. I can. I have a 100-page rule book. I don't know if you can see it over there, A World at War. And I'm expecting that that'll be readable. Although I expect that probably has also suffered from rules bloat. There seems to be this real problem as we've gotten further and further in games with rules getting bloated to make sure that some tournament player somewhere can't take some advantage by misinterpreting something a little bit. I'd rather this. This isn't perfect, though. And one of the problems with this is, unlike that third edition rulebook, and apparently the second edition original, this is, or like the second edition, this is programmed instruction, which means that they're going to give rules for little scenarios like this one, where you just walk around and try to visit all the locations and there's no danger and no threats, that get withdrawn as you go. And things aren't easy to find. But man, I find things easier to find in a 30-page rule book that's badly organized than a 130-page rule book with a staple through it. So anyway, the base movement, it's got plotted secret movement. Some people hate that. I kind of think it works in this. The only thing that I would say is I'd kind of want to, and I think I've done this, and this is where I got the end of day, all the monsters show up then. I think I did pulsed movement, where everybody does one action, everybody does one action. I don't believe that's an option in the rules, but I was trying to make the game work a little better. The actual monsters, what about combat? Combat's a pain in the butt. I really actually kind of dislike combat here. I wish combat was just die roll. And, you know, that's going to be anathema to a lot of the people who love the game, but this whole thing, first of all, it makes playing it solo multiplayer not work very well, because when things attack each other, I've got to start, you know, rolling dice and making guesses as to decisions. And that's especially bad when you've got someone like the dwarf who has a particular direction that they're good at, a particular maneuver that they're good at, but everybody can kind of guess that they have that. And in fact, their other counters are so bad comparatively that pretty much anybody can kill them. Any player can kill them, as long as they have a heavy enough weapon that they can use. But the dwarf is actually really potent against monsters, which just doesn't make sense. It's like, he's there like, ha, I'm gonna duck. Like, thanks, buddy, I'm trying to kill you here. So that's really a disturbing factor of this. I did not like this kind of combat system. The first time I saw it was in Chivalry and Sorcery, an older game, a role-playing game, where you picked, I'm putting my shield here, my weapon up here, or coming down from below, and you pick all this kind of stuff, and it's just diceless, and it ends up being, in the best of cases, you're playing rock, paper, scissors with each other. And in the worst of cases, well, it's a little off from that, in the sense that, you can start judging things that look more valuable to a player, and then eventually it gets down to, okay, well, if he does this, I can't hit him unless I do this, and if he doesn't do that, in the case of the dwarf, I can hit him no matter what. So that, I don't mind it with the monsters, the system, but I really hate the system when it comes player versus player. I don't like guess versus guesswork. Strangely enough, I play Warp War and think that's kind of cool, but not Solitaire. So that's my big gripe against the combat system. Not so bad when you're off on your own, but when you start getting player versus player conflict, it just doesn't please me. The monsters, oh man. They're good. I mean, they work okay. It's just that the system for allocating them, again, you can sometimes figure out, first of all, you can figure out I can kill that no matter what. And again, it's because of the diceless combat system. Or that can kill me no matter what. There's no, I got a shot at it type of feeling almost ever. And then there's the fact that some of the monsters aren't terribly easy to kill, but they're not worth a lot of points. And other ones, what's easy for someone to kill is different from player to player, or from character to character. So the really heavy guys can take out a big monster. And the magicians can take out either a bunch of little monsters or a big monster, depending on their spellcasting capability. That's only the two booms. The Witch King's a boom too, in that sense. Most of the characters can't handle either a big monster or a bunch of little monsters. And they're kind of stuck in the place where all they can do is hunt treasure, and they've got to be really, really fearful of everything else. And that's kind of the mindset that sets into me with everything. But as we saw with the dwarf, he could just kind of say, I'm just going to walk up there and kill it. Which, he's one of the few characters who can really do that, but the wizard can also, with his fiery blast, could destroy a whole horde of littler things. His lightning bolt has a pretty good chance of taking down a big thing. The treasures, this is the cool part of the game. Pain in the ass to set up, though. You have to set up this whole sheet. 2 treasures in each of these, spells in all of these, different sets of treasures here. The ordering matters, up here, everywhere. And the setup and teardown is really expensive in this. My teardown, where I've got things set up the way I do, is the best way that I can do this setup quickly. I mean, sure, look, you could use more little baggies, there's no question, but there's a limit to how many. The natives. These are one of the things that I feel is underutilized. At least in my play of the game, they almost never serve much purpose. You can trade and hire for them, trade with them or hire them. Usually it costs too much money to trade or hire, and usually you can find magic items that get you good things. One of the problems is killing monsters doesn't give you any money. So if you're going to go out and just blow up a bunch of monsters and you don't plan on doing any looting, like if you want to go after the little guys in the woods or something, and you can rack up points with them with certain characters, then that's all you're going to respond with, and you're not going to go for these guys. If you're going to do a lot of looting, you're probably going to find all kinds of cool stuff anyway, and you don't need what these guys have. And you're just going to turn stuff in with them to get gold. And so all that kind of doesn't really work. Hiring someone, that could be really useful. So here's the thing. Some of the characters suck bad enough that they can't handle a bunch of enemies. You're not going to probably be able to hire too many people except like this great axeman who can handle the big monsters for you. But you could hire a bunch of cannon fodder if they were cheap enough that you could take them and, they could help defend you against lots of small monsters, especially if you're one of the big heavy guys who has trouble against that. The problem is, by the time you got the money to do that, you should actually have enough points to win, and don't worry about it. And that's one of the, hey, maybe the game needs to be extended somehow. And there are ways to do that. There's no question. Magic is very neat in this game. I actually like the magic system a lot. I like a lot of the components, actually. It's just how they fit together and work and create an overall gestalt that doesn't work for me. The nice thing about the magic is this preparation work that has to go into it. You're not just walking into combat, boom, fireball. At least until you start getting some cool stuff. But you can prepare an area so that you're very strong in it, and so that other people have to stay away from you. You could also set yourself up so that you have, prepared color magic, so you can fire your spells off a little bit, effectively, right? You can't combat without the color. There's something very neat about that kind of thinking to me, in a way that actually still works well with the rest of the game. It just, there's some, I don't know, there's something kind of cool about the magic side of it for me. What I don't necessarily like about the magic is you find a couple of the right items and you become a god. You find an item that gives you your color as a source, which is pretty, there's one of them for each color, I think, but it's a pretty big deal if you find the one that helps you, and you can then cast magic all the time without having to worry about converting counters over and all that kind of tedious work. You become so much more powerful. But if you find the crystal ball, you can start firing attack spells through it. That's pretty potent too. And some of those attack spells aren't as easy as just, well, you're going to die. Some of them are like, I'm going to just keep cursing you through this. If somebody gets the right items for that, they can just start throwing curses at you and just make your life miserable. And like with the death not being reborn, you just say, look, I just want to quit now. The campaign section is probably the weakest of the thing. It basically has no effect. It seems cool. It's like most of the game. It seems so incredibly cool. Like there was this great idea in mind, but it just didn't all quite get put together right. And the campaign system is that. And this is what drove me towards the most towards the, I want to try to make this into something where they start out as adventures and it turns into a war. Where they've got hirelings going after each other, with the headquarters is moving their own little forces and the player character moving and trying to wipe each other out. And at that point I make death permanent. And I started making something like that. So among the optional roles is the character advancement role, where you start out as a low-level guy who can do almost nothing. And you're just so damn weak. And for that, it's really, really hard to get up to your first level. Because it's going to be hard to get 10 fame, or 20 notoriety, or 30 gold, or a great treasure or anything. But you might end up doing that, and then you can win, maybe more quickly than you would with a full character who has to get the full 4 victory points. Because that's the deal with the initial level of different starting levels. Is that you can pick your starting level and you just need less victory conditions to do it. And you could get very lucky very easily, or you could get dead and then you start over again, another low-level character, and you can probably win the game more quickly that way than any other way. The thing that I wanted to try to do with it was to work advancement. Third edition does this. What I did was, hey, you make 1 victory condition, you're now level 2. You make 2 victory conditions. Once you make all 4 victory conditions, you're at your top level, then you have entered sort of the final part of the game, and you have to complete a campaign to win. I thought that would work pretty well I kind of tried it, and I don't think I completed the game. Like, not because it was too hard or anything, but just because it still feels like Magic Realm. It's still there's still something here that I can't quite put my finger on that just feels incredibly dull about most of the playing of the game. The first 2 3 hours, whatever. The first half month, say, whatever length that takes. That's kind of exciting. But once the treasures start getting tapped out, once it feels like you're getting close to winning, you just want it over. You really don't want to keep extending it more and making a bigger game out of it. There may be ways to do that to make it more exciting for me, but the one that I tried didn't work for me. And it's one of the reasons that I stayed away from the third edition rules. I just don't have the energy and excitement about the game that I once did to relearn it and get to that point where I really do want to try out lots of new things. At this point, I got a kick out of playing that first half of the first month, and then it really got pretty dull for me. There just wasn't anything more. And then it got kind of exciting right at the end. When it stopped feeling like Magic Realm and the dwarf was hunting the wizard and the wizard's here killing him through the spell. Those don't happen. That kind of situation is not the norm. Okay? The norm actually, for my games of it, is that somebody collects up their victory conditions and wins. This seemed so much more dramatic because I had gotten so tired of it that people were willing to quit. Which is something I was aiming for with some of my optional rules, was make it more dramatic because the ending is always such a letdown. I got my 30 gold and I killed some monsters and yeah, I have this, I don't know what it is, it looks like a bat's dingus. I don't know. Alright, send her up.